Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A better life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Taylor, the spiritual MD, and I'm also the hormone doctor. I told you I've lived like 2 lives. So, I started out as an OBGYN and then really became interested in hormones. And then I got more interested in the mind, body, and spiritual aspect. So kind of my new name is the spiritual MD, but I'm also the hormone doctor. And this episode is going to be more about the hormone doctor, because I don't think you can get your mind right and you can't really get connected with that higher power or the spirit if your hormones aren't right, because the hormones are so important, especially the stress hormone, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm on TikTok now. You can follow me on TikTok as the hormone doctor. And I've got a pretty good following there, and I just started 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've done some episodes or some videos there that have gotten a lot of views, and they're really interested in hormones. I think I'm gonna start another TikTok that's spiritual MD, so that I can connect with both of those audiences, then kind of like I'm doing here. So, but today we're really going to talk about hormones. And I want you guys to really understand why I focus on this so much and why I'm such an advocate for saliva testing, so that you can understand this. So I believe that patients can understand how their body works, because your body is so logical. If you just think that your body is always trying to survive, even though you do things to try and kill it. Okay, just think my body is trying to correct all of the stupid stuff that I'm doing that's really hurting it. And then you can start to realize, or you can start to understand how your body works. So today we're going to talk about how so many symptoms can be narrowed down to a couple of root causes. And it's just like, I have a garden, and if you can pull the root out from the weed, then the weed doesn't grow back. But if I keep just chopping off the top of the weed, then it always comes back. So that's how I look at that. The weeds are the symptoms, but they have a root. And modern medicine just wants to cut down the symptoms, wants to cut down the weeds, and they always pop back. Because you know why? Because if it comes back in 24 hours, you need to take that pill again. There's no long-term solution. So now I got you in a bind. You need that pill to chop down the weed every day. So it keeps you going to the pharmacist to get that weed whacker. But if you would just take a little time and really grab hold of what's going on and pull it out from the root, then your problem's solved. Your garden can grow and your weeds are eliminated. So we're going to get down to the root and get you to stop chopping off the symptoms. All right. So let's go to the first slide. All right. Understanding hormone balance, your body's message system. Hormones are your body's chemical messengers. They travel through your bloodstream, through the tissues and organs throughout your entire system. And I want to stop right there. They travel through your bloodstream to go to your tissue. Okay. So the bloodstream is just a highway system. It takes something from one place to the other. That is not where the action happens. The action happens in the tissue. The saliva test shows us what is happening in the destination, not on the highway. You got to think, you take a highway to work or some road to work, but you do your work at that destination. Now, you may be texting and driving, you may be emailing, but you go and spend 8 hours or more at work. That's where the action is. So we're not interested in what happens on the highway. We're interested in what happens in the tissue. Okay. So these powerful compounds control nearly everything your body does, from mood and energy to sleep patterns to fertility and digestion. So we wrote the books, the Stress Connection, because these hormones are connected to everything. All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right. We're going to talk about stress. And I want you to understand, not all stress is bad. You have something called eustress, EUSTRESS, and then you have distress, DISTRESS. So you've got to have a little bit of stress to get up in the morning. You got to have a reason to get up. I talk about in Ageless Blueprint, you got to have a reason to get up. If not, you'll just sit dormant, forever. I mean, if you don't have anything to do, you're just going to waste your life away. So you need something that wakes you up in the morning that you have to do. All right. So that gives you alertness. So you want to be aware and alert of what's going on. And then you need a little bit of medium stress. See, I have a little stress that I know at 9 o'clock, you're expecting me to be on this podcast. So I have a little stress built up the night before. I don't sleep quite as well. I have to get ready. I have a little adrenaline flowing. So that's fine. I'm trying to be at my optimal level. All right. I try to prepare. I try to be comfortable, but I want to optimize what I'm doing. But when the stress crosses over here, you start to get anxiety and disorganization. Now, I will tell you, when I first started this, several weeks ago, I had a little bit of anxiety. I had a little bit of disorganization because I was really making too much out of the situation. So I had to get back to this level. All right. So not all stress is bad. Our problem is we're dealing with so many distractions, so many things coming at us, the news, your family, your kids, your job, all of this. It can lead to this high stress and you end up disorganized and anxious. And when you're like that, what does that cause? That causes more stress. Okay. Now, I started giving this lecture about 20 years ago because I saw a study. It was in the Journal of Metabolism and it came out in 2002. And again, I've been at this game for a long time, for over 25 years. And this got me interested in stress. So let me just go through this. 43% of all adults suffer stress-related adverse health effects. All right. Now, this is from 2002. I actually have a newer article, and it's even more significant. Now, even back then, 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. So when I saw this article, I said, look, if I focus on stress, I'm going to be right 75 to 90% of the time. I'm like, that's pretty good odds. And so let me really become an expert in stress. And I think all physicians should be an expert in stress. If 75 to 90% of your patients, and that number is higher now, 75 to 90% of all of your patients have stress-related complaints or disorders, you need to be a stress expert. Because if 75 to 90% of your patients have diabetes, you would be a diabetes expert. You would go to conferences on diabetes. You would read articles on diabetes. You would immerse yourself in the treatment of diabetes. So even the diabetes is probably caused by stress. So that's chopping off the top of the weeds and never pulling it up from the root. So stress has been linked to all the leading causes of death: cardiovascular disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis, suicide. That's how important this is. And that's why I keep talking about it. They say they say people have to hear something 7 times before they really grasp it. So I think this is maybe the second or third podcast I've done on stress. So just know you got 4 more coming, okay? Because everybody needs to understand this. An estimated 1 million workers are absent each day with stress-related complaints. So it's decreasing our productivity, and that stress is responsible for more than 25 billion workdays lost annually. Again, that was in 2002. So those numbers are much bigger now, okay? So common symptoms of hormone imbalance. Now, here are some of the weeds, okay? Just think of these are all coming from a central root. So physical symptoms, persistent fatigue despite adequate rest, unexplained weight gain, especially around the abdomen. Now, I can't tell you how many people come in my office complaining of those 2 right there. Disrupted sleep patterns and insomnia. Excuse me. Acne or melasma, skin discolorations, whether it's rosacea, whether it's acne, whether it's eczema, whether it's melasma, all of that can be directed back or traced back to hormones. So then you have emotional symptoms, mood swings and emotional volatility, anxiety or depression without clear triggers. It's okay to be anxious if there's something to be anxious about, or depressed if there's something to be depressed about. But if you don't have a trigger that's starting that, then that's abnormal. Brain fog and memory problems. I don't know how many patients come in, especially around menopause, with brain fog and memory problems. You get decreased interest in sex and intimacy, and reproductive symptoms, heavy or irregular menstrual periods, severe PMS, fertility challenges, changes in breast tissue and sensitivity. So, I want to, especially fertility challenges. The stress of our environment has caused sperm counts to go down, fertility rates to go down, because ovulation, or making an egg in a woman, or making sperm in men, it is all based on, does your body think it can handle it? Because reproduction is a stress, okay? It's a stress on the body. The baby is a parasite. It takes everything it can from the mother, and whatever's left, the mother keeps. That's why a mother's blood count goes down, because the baby's taking the iron. So that's a stressful situation. That's why a lot of women who are in fertility workups don't get pregnant. And then once they kind of let go and say, forget about it, and stop with the stress and the timing of having sex and all that, they get pregnant. So all of this can be traced back to stress and hormones. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, different diagnoses, one common root. Women and men often receive various diagnoses that seem unrelated but share a common underlying cause: hormonal imbalance. The diagnosis of depression and anxiety, or polycystic ovary, which can cause the irregular bleeding, irritable bowel syndrome. Hey, why is my bowel irritated? Well, because stress affects your digestive system. Menopause and perimenopausal symptoms, adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue, all have a root cause of stress or other hormonal imbalances. So cortisol, the stress hormone. And, I just left Joe Dispenza's 7-day workshop. And he's always talking about people being addicted to the hormones of stress and living in this constant stress state, constant survival mode. You want to move out of survival mode into thrive. You don't want to survive, you want to thrive. And as long as you're in survival mode, you cannot thrive. So you need to be able to handle this. So the stress hormone, how is it produced? It's produced in this gland called the adrenal gland that's right on top of your kidneys. It regulates your blood sugar, metabolism. It regulates your sleep cycles, your day and night cycles, and it regulates your immune system. Your immune system is what protects you from cancer, from COVID, from all types of infections and parasites, is that your immune system needs to be working. And the reason why cortisol dampens all of this, I'll show you this in another slide, is that when you're in survival mode, You're only focused on yourself and your survival this second. Okay? That's all you're concerned about. So whether a cancer will kill you in 5 years or a parasite might cause an infection or anything like that, your body doesn't care. It thinks that you are in danger right this moment. And so it shifts everything to your fight or flight. Everything goes to your muscles, getting you ready to run. You start pouring out glucose so that you have enough energy to run or fight. But if you don't need it to run or fight, if you're not a professional athlete and you're about to, go on have a competition, that's when that works well. But when you're like that 24/7 for the last 10 years, that's not a good thing. All right. The imbalance is chronic stress leads to persistently elevated cortisol levels. And when those levels stay elevated long enough, you don't go back to normal. You actually you decompensate. You go below normal. And then that's what causes the fatigue and all of those other symptoms. So the consequences of the stress hormone is you get abdominal fat because all of that glucose that your body thought you were going to use to run or fight, you don't use it. So they just store it. Your body just stores it away as fat. All right. You get the insomnia because your body says, hey, you don't need to sleep. You're in danger. Stay up. Hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Something might be coming after you. Get up. You get hypertension because your body is trying to make sure that there's enough pressure going to those muscles. The blood pressure is going toward those muscles, and also adrenaline causes your vessels to constrict. You get these skin issues because your detoxification, your gut is not working well. And when you have skin problems, it usually has its origin in the gut. And let me tell you why. Your gut should eliminate toxins, but if you're not doing that effectively, then you eliminate toxins through your bowel movements, through your kidneys, and the third one is through your skin. So if your gut's not working, your skin is going to start to get rid of those toxins, and that's where you can get acne and melasma and all of these skin issues, eczema. Anytime you have a skin eruption, start looking at your gut. So too much cortisol, you get these chronic stress triggers. High cortisol. When your body is constantly in fight or flight mode, cortisol production remains elevated beyond healthy levels. It also suppresses progesterone. I'm going to show you that in a graphic. Progesterone deficiency symptoms emerge and estrogen dominance develops. So that is the problem. It's a domino effect. Once the stress starts, it starts to screw up everything. That's why we wrote the book, The Stress Connection. It screws up everything. So you have to get to the root of the problem. We have to be able to identify and treat stress. And I want to get this across. It's very hard to manage something that you cannot measure. It's hard to manage your money if you don't measure it, if you don't have a bookkeeper or you don't keep a ledger in your checkbook. I know nobody has a checkbook anymore, but you have to be able to measure something if you want to manage it. So in order to manage your hormones or manage stress, you have to be able to measure it appropriately. Okay. You just can't measure it any way you feel like it. You have to measure it appropriately. So that's what's so important is, can I manage this if I have the proper measurement? And that's what I'm trying to provide for you, to tell you how important the saliva test is so that you can manage these issues. Now, let me tell you what I learned in medical school. All right. We were taught to identify and treat diseases. Okay. That's, if you have a disease, then you need to go to a conventional doc and have them identify and treat it. I actually love it when a patient has already tried conventional medicine and has been told that everything's normal. That tells me that you have no disease. That means I can start looking at functional problems. So let's just look at cortisol. These are the two diseases of cortisol, or your adrenal gland. Remember, the adrenal gland is what makes the cortisol. So these are the two diseases. You have Cushing's syndrome, and that's when you have all of this glucose, you gain weight, you get this buffalo hump. People who are on steroids for a long time, that is really having too much cortisol. That's what prednisone is. When they talk about being on steroids, is that it causes this glucose to be, it causes what they call a buffalo hump. It causes all these issues that I'm talking about when you have too much cortisol. But it has to be way over here. If anybody has taken statistics, there's something called a standard deviation. So what you see is that you have this optimal level here. And in order for you to be classified as a disease, you have to be 2 standard deviations from normal. All right. And if you have low cortisol, it's called Addison's disease. That's actually what John F. Kennedy had, is Addison's disease. You had very low cortisol and you lose a lot of sodium and potassium and all these. It can be deadly. But that's when you're always all the way over here. Saliva testing and functional medicine, it measures people here and here. Okay, that's why we go to the doctor and they say, you're fine, you don't have a disease. They're saying you don't have Cushing's syndrome and you don't have Addison's disease. But what about if you lived your whole life here and now you're living it here, or you're living it here? You feel different. You feel abnormal. You don't feel well because you have moved from here to here. Or even if you're right here or right here, your doctor's going to say your labs are normal. But if you do saliva testing, we look at this and we look at deviations anywhere in this area. All right. So, Rebel, does that make sense? I want to keep explaining this so that you can understand what happens when you go to a doctor and what happens when you go to someone who practices functional medicine. If you don't fit here or here, and this is only 2.5% of the population. This is 2.5%. This is 2.5%. So that means 95% of the population is here. That's that 75 to 90% of people who come to the doctor for stress-related complaints or disorders. Is that clear? I'm going to stay here, and so I can get you to understand why I'm so adamant about this. All right?
I just don't think people understand. See, you can be in the levels, like you can be in the red, you can be in the blue, you can be in the yellow. But if your particular body is off, I mean, I don't know why they go by this scale. Like everybody has to fit in this scale because everybody's different.
Exactly.
So 2 points off might be equal to 10 points off in other people.
Exactly.
You know your body the best. And if you know something's wrong, do your due diligent research. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yeah. And understand what the doctor is telling you. He's only telling you that you don't have this and you don't have that. Okay. That's all the lab test is telling you. It's not telling you anything about where you are here. And that's what functional medicine is all about, is that you don't have a disease, but you're not functioning at this level. You're functioning over here or you're functioning over there. And when we know that, now that we've measured it, now we can manage it. Okay, now we're ready. We know what the problem is. We know what the root cause is. Let's pull up that weed and let's keep going. All right.
We have someone here.
Yeah. We got to kick stress out. Yes, you do. You got to pull up that stress weed. Okay. You got to pull it up from the root. So how does stress impact the whole body? It affects the brain and memory. By chronic stress actually shrinks your brain. Your brain is actually losing volume if you're chronically stressed. That's why it's hard to remember things. That's why it's hard to think. It impairs your memory formation and it reduces cognitive function. That's what people are coming in saying they have brain fog. They say, hey, look, some of the things that I used to could do and they were easy for me, now they're very difficult. That's because they don't have enough cortisol or glucose going to their brain in order to for their brain to function properly. So that's why you have the brain fog. That's why now you go to work and it's a job that you've been doing for 15 years. Now, all of those tasks that used to just be commonplace have become difficult. All right. Now, also, it affects your gut. Stress alters gut bacteria, increases inflammation, and disrupts the normal digestive process. Exactly. We all say, "Hey, I feel it in my gut. I got queasy in my gut. Hey, I'm nervous. My gut. I'm having diarrhea." Yes, stress affects your digestion and your gut. It affects your skin health. Stress hormones triggers inflammation, worsens conditions like eczema, and accelerates aging. And I told you these two are connected. Skin, inflammation in the gut, whatever. It causes the gut not to be able to eliminate toxins. So it says, okay, let's eliminate it through your skin. And that's why you get the acne. That's why you get the eczema, all of these skin eruptions. It affects reproductive hormones. Stress disrupts menstrual cycle. It disrupts fertility. We just talked about that. It exacerbates PMS and menopause symptoms. And it affects the muscles and joints, with persistent tension and inflammation lead to chronic pain and reduced mobility. I'll tell you, and you can look, some of the people listening, if you're going to the doctor and they're telling you everything's fine, more than likely you're complaining of one of these symptoms. And you don't have a disease, but you definitely are not functioning at the optimal level. Hormones in the skin. I actually had a patient. Let me tell you this. I had a patient just 2 days ago. She came in because we do something with vitamin C and glutathione to help with skin issues. And she said that all of her problems started when her nephew, who was 26 years old, was hit by a hit and run driver and was killed. And she and her sister, who was the child's mother, so it was my patient's nephew, the patient, and the kids, the late child mother, they're sisters. So they're a very close-knit family. And both of them got hyperpigmentation or melasma, which is a hormone problem. It causes this discoloration like this. Both of them got it after that incident with the hit and run. And that just brought to the surface for me that how stress can affect every part of your body, okay, internally and externally. All right, so next slide. The hormone domino effect. So high cortisol leads to chronic stress and it elevates cortisol levels. And that leads to low progesterone. The elevated cortisol suppresses progesterone production. And I'm going to show you that in this next slide where you can really see how this domino effect works. Now, without progesterone, you start to have estrogen dominance. Without progesterone to balance estrogen, symptoms like mood swings, skin issues, and menstrual problems develop. And then also, cortisol blocks thyroid hormone. Hormonal imbalances affect thyroid function, leading to fatigue, weight gain, and metabolic slowdown. So there's two things that control energy, your cortisol and your thyroid. And when you're in survival mode, cortisol, your adrenal gland, shuts off your thyroid hormone. It says, hey, look, we can't have you wasting energy on all this other stuff. We need to control all energy production. So it blocks your thyroid hormone. But here's what it also does. It makes it where your TSH does not reflect your thyroid function. Most doctors just look at TSH, something called thyroid stimulating hormone. And if it's elevated, it says that your thyroid is not working well. Well, when you're under stress, this is what happens. Your thyroid does not work well, but the TSH does not reflect it. So if you're going to the doctor and you're having fatigue and weight gain and all this, and they look at your TSH and it's normal, if cortisol is involved, that normal doesn't mean anything. You have to look at something called your free T3. And I don't want to get too technical. I just want to show you how it affects everything. And you have to understand that. And when a doctor tells you that a lab is normal, you just have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. Well, we're 30 minutes in. So I know I've hit you with a lot of stuff, and I'm going to leave some time at the end to see where I may have not explained things well enough. But let's take a break right now. We'll have another 20 minutes and we'll go from there, okay?
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the Ageless Blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science, designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Okay, we're back. I'm Dr. Taylor, the spiritual MD, and also the hormone doctor. And this episode is me being the hormone doctor, okay? Now, you look at this and it seems like, hey, you know, this is too much for me to understand, but it's not. All right. So let's start from the top. So I talk about, I tell people that you can be an honorary gynecologist. Well, now I'm going to make you an honorary stress expert. So we're going to start from the top. All hormones are made from cholesterol. So I'm going to stop there. Elevated cholesterol can be a problem. Okay. But you need cholesterol. Cholesterol is not your enemy. You need cholesterol for your brain to work. And you see all your hormones come from cholesterol. So when you see these commercials saying you need to get your cholesterol lower, you need to take it needs to be 100. No, you need cholesterol or you cannot make hormones. So cholesterol is not your enemy. It's not a mistake by God to give you cholesterol. All right. So cholesterol. So all I want to show you is that when you are under stress, all of this goes towards cortisol. It says, forget everything else. We've got an emergency here. So we've got to pump out cortisol. Now, what happens when that happens? Well, this is progesterone. Okay. Progesterone. All right. So you don't make progesterone. Progesterone gets converted into cortisol. Right? So this goes away. I know you, let me, if I can move this, I can. But this is progesterone, believe me. All right. So progesterone goes towards cortisol, or it goes toward these mineral corticoids. And that's like magnesium and all these things. But I just want to focus here. So progesterone goes away because it's all going toward cortisol. But look what does happen. Now here, you can still make testosterone. So a lot of people, when they're low in progesterone, they begin to have male pattern hair baldness. I want to, if you have ever been pregnant, the baby's placenta makes a lot of progesterone. Progesterone is called progesterone because it promotes gestation. So you get this huge amount of progesterone when you're pregnant. And a lot of women will say their hair grew, their nails grew, they felt good because progesterone stimulates hair growth. All right. But when you don't have that, you can have hair thinning. That's why women who are menopausal, their hair thins and they grow a mustache because they start to make testosterone. And remember how I told you your fat tissue can make estrogen? Well, this is how it does it. When you don't have any progesterone, you can still go down this pathway. Here's testosterone. And in your fat tissue, you can convert that to estrogens. All right. So that's what I tell you. This is biochemistry or organic chemistry. And so that sounds like a big name, but I want you to see how when you're under stress, it causes the problems that we just talked about. It is a domino effect. You get too much of this, you get too much of this, and you get too much of this. and you don't get enough of that. So that's why I focus on you looking at your cortisol and your progesterone. We want to see how high or lower is this. We want to see how low is this so we can replace this. And once you replace this, you stop making testosterone and your hair can grow back. Your acne can get better because testosterone also causes acne. All right. So, Rebel, is this too complicated?
Wow. Not too complicated, just a lot to process, to be honest with you. Because see, there, like you said, once you start that domino effect, how do you stop it? I mean, that is, it's, and you know how fast dominoes can fall.
Exactly. So you got to go back to that first domino. What tipped over that first domino? It was this. Okay, so you got to figure out. So again, my 4-point stress reduction plan is 1, get rid of the stress. Get rid of the stresses that you know about and get rid of the stresses that you don't know about, like a poor diet that's stressing out your gut, a poor environment at work that's stressing out your emotions, a poor exercise routine that's making you sedentary and causing problems. So you have to get rid of the stress. And now, if it's a bad relationship, get rid of those relationships. There's some stresses you can't get rid of. So now you have to change how you respond to those stressors. You have to change how you respond to your boss who stresses you out if you can't leave the job. You have to change how you respond to your sick child because you can't get rid of your children. Okay, so you have to change how you respond to the stress. What I'm talking about today is helping you to repair the damage caused by the stress. So we can measure this and say, here's the damage. You don't have enough progesterone. You're making too much testosterone. Your cortisol is even high or low. So let's repair the damage that has been caused. Let's repair your gut. Let's get your gut right. So you have to repair the damage, and then you have to prepare for future stress because more stress will come. But I don't want you to get bogged down by all of these chemical symbols. I just want you to look at these names. When you have too much stress, you're going to make plenty of testosterone, you're going to make plenty of estrogen, and you're not going to have a lot of progesterone. And when I see these women menopausally, they're getting estrogen and testosterone in pellets. Those are the two things that you really don't need. What you really need is to replace this. So that's what happens when you don't understand what is going on in your body, is that you think that the doctor knows more than you, but that's not necessarily so. All right. So I if I have to come to this again, but I just want you to see, and this is a part of Ageless Blueprint, is that this diagram has been around for ages. I don't have to come up with something new to show you how your body works. It's written in stone. This is organic chemistry. This is just the chemistry of your body, and it's been around for a long time. And so, a lot of I hear all this. You got to have this new study or whatever. I don't care what the study shows. You can make a study show you anything that you want. What I want to know is the basic blueprint of how things work. And that's what I'm trying to give to you, is that basic blueprint of this is how things work. It doesn't matter what my opinion is, doesn't matter what another doctor's opinion is. This is just how things work. I try to stop preaching on this subject, but I've been preaching this sermon for 25 years. And now I realize there's a whole new generation of people who haven't heard this. So that's why I'm on this crusade all of the sudden, because I've it's like deja vu. I've been here and done that before, but this is kind of like, Disney movies. There's always a new generation that needs to learn or needs to watch Lion King. So there's always a new generation that needs to understand how their body works. And one of the reasons why I'm on social media, on YouTube and all this, so that even when I'm dead and gone, maybe somebody will see this on YouTube and like, wow, now I really understand what's going on with myself. All right. Okay. I'm going to
questions before we move on.
Okay, go ahead.
Real quick. All right.
Yeah,
If you have leaky gut, will it release through the body?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, skin eruptions. When you have leaky gut, this is what leaky gut is. Leaky gut, what's supposed to happen in your gut is that tube that runs from your mouth to your anus, it is supposed to absorb nutrients and it's supposed to get rid of toxins through your bowel movements. When you have leaky gut, that means that your gut is inflamed. And when your gut is inflamed, it gets leaky. You got to think about when your nose is inflamed, it gets leaky, right? It starts to leak out mucus. Well, what happens in the gut, you start to leak out undigested food. Okay, you should totally digest your food and you absorb the nutrients and you get rid of the toxins. Well, when you have leaky gut, the toxins get into the body, and the body has an inflammatory response because it's like, hey, I'm not supposed to see little pieces of chicken or little pieces of broccoli. And that's how you get food sensitivities, and they cause inflammation. And they don't cause the inflammation that someone has when they eat shellfish and their face blows up and they can't breathe. It's this low level of inflammation that can cause problems like hypertension and heart disease and things like that, that you don't know that it's an inflammatory process. It shows up as a symptom. So yes, leaky gut releases toxins in the body and causes inflammation. And you kind of have to think about, how do you feel right before you know you have a cold or you know you have the flu? You start to feel a little achy. You're like, I'm kind of tired. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're like, oh, I have the flu. Well, just think you never get the flu, but you stay in that low level of inflammation state for weeks or months or years. And that's what you get with the brain fog and all that. So anyway, I don't want to get too far on that, but that's what happens with leaky gut. Any other questions?
Yes, the next question.
Okay.
If a kidney is removed, what happens to the adrenal gland above it?
Well, it's like, thank goodness that you have 2 of those. Okay. And when, I told you your body wants to survive, even though we cut out things or whatever. So if you remove one, the other kidney takes over. And usually it takes over adequately unless there's some other issue going on. So your body just converts and it just makes the other kidney and adrenal gland work double time. And so it's kind of like your God made it where things that might go wrong, he gave you 2 of them. And luckily he gave you 2 kidneys. He or she gave you 2 kidneys, 2 adrenal glands. And that's why, people can survive with just 1 kidney.
Are they attached? I mean, if you remove the kidney, do they remove the adrenal gland?
Now, I'm not a kidney surgeon, but as far as I know, they're attached. Is that they're right on top of it. Maybe some skilled surgeon can separate those out, but as far as I know, again, this is what I tell everybody. I know what I know and I know what I don't know. But as far as I know, that kidney and the adrenal gland, because the medical name for a kidney is renal, renal. So adrenal means it's right on top of the kidney or the renal gland. So I would assume that both of those are removed if you've had your kidney removed. Any other questions?
How do we stop storing the cortisol?
You have to, like I told you, it's the 4th step. Get rid of the stress, change how you respond to it. And that's why I've started promoting meditation, because that is one way to change how you respond to stress. Is you have to give yourself a break from that addiction to the stress hormone. If you can go, and you can learn meditation. I learned meditation. I couldn't meditate at all, but I've learned, I always talk about this, through my Muse headband. I have it right here. It's always here. Put it on your head. It gives you biofeedback so that you know whether or not you're in this meditative state. And that is the best way to disconnect from that stress response. Even if it's 15, 20 minutes away. I mean, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes a day, that is a break that your body can relax. And when you are relaxed, that's when your body can repair itself. So I try to step in to help you to repair yourself, but your body can do it on its own. but it can't do it if it thinks you're in danger every second of the day. So that's how you can suppress that cortisol. So this is, hey, I have it right here. I'm glad you asked the question. So let's do it in a more organized fashion. Get comprehensive testing. Opt for saliva or urine testing to measure cortisol patterns. Now, I'm not a big urine test because you have to do it for 24 hours. I really focus on saliva. So you can measure cortisol patterns throughout the day, because cortisol should be high in the morning. Just think, you should wake up, you should have energy. And then your energy should dissipate as the day goes on. And that is a normal cortisol rhythm. And when you do a saliva test, you take 4 samples throughout the day, about 4 hours apart, so we can see what your cortisol curve looks like. That's the first step. Let me figure out what is going on. These tests provide more accurate information about your hormones than standard blood tests. And I hope I made that clear. Prioritize quality sleep. Practice daily breath work or meditation. Incorporate gentle movement. Tai Chi, Qigong, any kind of gentle movement can help you to eliminate stress. Now, don't go out and start doing CrossFit, and some strenuous exercise, because that's just more stress. You need stress reduction strategies. So gentle movement, establish healthy boundaries in work and relationships to reduce cortisol production. You want to support hormone balance naturally. Adjust your nutrition to include hormone supporting foods. Consider adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha or rhodiola. We have an excellent product called Adrenacare Glandular that combines all of these to help you to better adapt to stress. These are all things called adaptogens, and these are herbs that grow in very stressful environments. They could be grow on high mountains where there's not much oxygen. They may grow in very cold areas or very hot desert areas, and they have learned how to survive in stressful external environments. And they make something called heat shock proteins that you can ingest, and it helps you to better adjust to stress. That's why they're called adaptogens. We have a great product that does that. All right. So begin your hormone balance journey. If you go to school.com/ageless, we have a free course called Hormone Clarity Course. It's absolutely free, and it's a blueprint to understand the foundations of hormone health. You can order a saliva hormone test. If you go to Ageless Blueprint, you'll see order your saliva test here. And I have something called a stand store to get your personalized hormone profile. We'll send you a saliva kit. You'll fill out a form to kind of show me what your symptoms are. And I will review those, give you a video. I'll send you a video explanation of what's going on with you. And I'll give you suggestions on how you can correct those things. So, and you can learn to interpret your body's signals and translate symptoms into meaningful action steps. So here's what you have to look at, is that your body is always trying to talk to you. Okay. It talks to you through those weeds that are growing up, and those weeds are symptoms. So you need to see where those symptoms are leading you to. So you need to have a moment of reflection every once in a while. Could my symptoms be my body's way of asking me for hormone balance? And your body speaks to you through symptoms, through those weeds. When you learn to listen, you gain the power to restore balance and reclaim your vitality. So anytime you have a symptom, it's trying to tell you something. And you just need to be able to interpret those. And the more you get in touch with your body, your intuition, and you stop looking at the external environment and thinking that you're in danger, you have to wipe all of that away. That's another Joe Dispenza thing, is get rid of these external stimuli and focus on your inward stimuli and be better able to understand what your body is trying to tell you. I know we're out of time. I see the timer here. Any last things, but please go to my school group and go take that free Hormone Clarity course. All right. Rebel, any last things we need to do before we stop?
We just need to remind everybody to tune in next week. Don't miss a show.
Yep.
And start monitoring what you're doing that's causing the stress that you may or may not know about. Yeah.
Yep. So really, like say, take inventory of yourself. Stop looking at what's on the outside and start looking inwardly, and you'll be surprised what you'll find out. I think that's it, Rebel. I think we're out of time. All right, see you guys next week. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. All right, so we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discovered ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and TaylorMDFormulations.com for more information.